Well, in addition to histamine and the like, there is a problem with chemicals present in wine and actually in all alcoholic beverage, chemicals known as congeners. And the rule is that the higher the concentration in congener, the more likely you're going to get negative side effect. And how do you determine the concentration in congener? Well, the rule is the more aged a beverage is, and here I'm extending to alcoholic beverages beyond wine, the more aged an alcoholic beverage is and the more colored it is, the more likely it would have a high concentration of congener and the more likely that it will give you negative after effect. Well, here is a chart showing the ratio or the rate of the detrimental effect of various alcoholic beverages, and you can see that red wine on that scale is much more detrimental than white wine. Just for fun, I don't know if it's the appropriate term, let's look at some of the other alcoholic beverages listed there. And all these are listed for the same alcohol content. You'll notice that in this case that vodka and gin have very low incidence in terms of unpleasant effect, rate of only 1. Well, vodka and gin are not aged and they are clear beverages. When you look at whiskey, you notice that it is much higher. Interestingly enough, as you can see here, whiskey is spelled in 2 ways. One with a E-Y, the other one with Y, and the Y seems to be much worse than the E-Y. Well, there is a theory there. First, in terms of the spelling, supposedly, whiskey spelled E-Y is whiskey that comes from the United States or Ireland, so American or Irish whiskey. Without the E, it's for Scottish or Canadian whiskey. I don't know how valid this is. Maybe some purists will come back and say, no, this is not the case. Well, at least this is a story I heard. Now, to remember which spelling to use, you notice whiskey EY comes from United States and Ireland, and in the name of the country you have the letter E. Whiskey KY comes from Scotland and Canada, and there is no E in the name of this country. Well, for those of you who are Scotch aficionado, you know that Scotch actually, or Irish or Canadian whiskey, tend to be aged and tend to be much more flavored than the American or the Irish whiskey. And you'll notice that also according to this chart, it seems to be much more detrimental. So at the bottom of the scale, meaning that it is more unpleasant, the worst in terms of side effect, you have got whiskey, without the E, and cognac. These are the ones that are the most unpleasant. By the way, just out of interest, you may know that the term that is used sometimes for cognac is brandy. Well, from where does that come? Well, cognac is actually made from distilled wine. And brandy supposedly comes from the Dutch brandwijn, burnt wine, meaning that the wine has been distilled. Well, in terms of potential benefit of wine, a study was shown that wine might actually cut the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Well, this is a study that was carried out where else? At the University of Bordeaux. And in terms of how much one would have to drink, well, the scientists recommend a moderate amount of wine. Well, what is moderate in the Bordeaux region? 3 to 4 glasses a day. Well, preparing this lecture, I came a very interesting book written by a physician by the name of Dr. Maury. He wrote this book, Medicines Through Wine, La médecine par le vin, and his theory is that all diseases can actually be treated with wine. The only thing is that you have to make sure that you use the right type of wine. So for instance, supposedly for diabetes, you use Bordeaux. If you have an infection, you use Beaujolais. High blood pressure, Champagne. Cellulite, for whatever that is, Muscadet, which is a wine from the Loire Valley. And if you're trying to lose weight, you should drink only Alsatian wine, the Sylvaner type of wine. Well, I have my doubt, but it's fun at least.